Welcome to another Snack Size Civics with. I am Cindy Bruflat with the Lakes Area League of Women Voters. Today I am with Carl Oberholzer. Carl is here to tell us a little bit about himself and provide some thoughts as to how or why our systems have continued to be such a success over the years.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
I taught high school students and college students for about 45 years, and I used history to teach them to think and analyze and so on. So that's my professional background.
Thank you.
Well, why has our government survived it's an incredible story. It's like a fairy tale story.
Really?
That for 250 years, a nation that's filled with over 300 million people, every ethnicity on the face of the earth, every religion on the face of the earth, rich, poor, socially different people, and yet here we are 250 years later, and we're still operating under the same system of government. It is one of the oldest systems of government in the world, and it is amazing that it is still operating the way it does. The people that created our government, what we generally say as the founding fathers, 55 individuals assembled in Philadelphia in the summer of 1787. And they were bound and determined to create a system of government that would kind of change the norm of what the world was used to. They looked at the history of Europe and they saw kings and queens that had absolute power. Divine right, that God chose you to become king and no one would challenge the king because you'd be challenging God. So how can they do this? How can they change? Well, they looked at the 55 men were well read, well educated, and they had listened and read about the Enlightenment in Europe. And the Enlightenment was a period of time where philosophers, it was a philosophical moment, where philosophers talked about how to change the norm. How can we make government better? And there was individuals like Thomas Hobbes and John Locke and Montesquieu and Voltaire and others that provided the ideas for these 55 men. And they talked about the freedom of expression and how to make sure the king doesn't become absolute and what have you. And that's where it all began. And so they were bound and determined to create this system of government that would work. And they looked at, first of all, they looked at separating power, making sure that no person, no one entity had all the power in the country. And so separation of powers, they gave the legislative branch the power to make our laws. They gave the executive branch the power to enforce the laws. And the judicial branch, the courts, would interpret the fairness of the laws. And they thought this would be the perfect way to make sure no one became too powerful. But then the question came up, what if one of the branches of government tries to take power from the others? And so there was a system of checks and balances that was created. Congress or the legislative branch would have the power to impeach a president or a judge for any high crimes or misdemeanors. The president would have the power over Congress to veto any laws that the president felt were not appropriate, in their opinion. And then the judicial branch was given the power to declare any executive order or a law passed by Congress to be unconstitutional. So all three branches had power over the other. And there's great philosophical discussion as to which branch these men wanted to make the most powerful. But this was a system of checks and balances. The third reason why I think that the government has survived so long is the basic idea of democratic principles, that the people should control the government. We, the people, in order to create a more perfect union, these people would have the power to choose the representatives. These people would have a say in the government. And these democratic principles, they come from these enlightened philosophers. Voltaire, he said, I may disagree with everything you say, but I will fight to my death for your right to say it. And definitely a saying that probably many Many servicemen in World War II fighting in Europe and in the Pacific didn't know who said something like that, but that was what they were doing. They were fighting and dying for the right for all of us to say what we want to say, and so on. And so the democratic principles were fundamental. Now, the fourth pillar that really I think has allowed this country to survive is the idea that the Constitution needs to be flexible. These founding fathers, as we call them, they were taking ideas from the Enlightenment and using them. But one of the most genius thing that they came up with was the idea that we don't know all the answers. We don't know what the future holds for this country. They could not foresee computers. They couldn't foresee space travel and airplanes and cars and everything else. And so they created a government that could adapt in the future. And that was the beauty of these individuals. They realized that they were humble enough to say, we don't have all the answers. And so today you have courts making those decisions and presidents making executive orders and so on, dealing with the current situation. So to me, those are the four pillars that have guaranteed the success of this country. But really, the one factor that needed to go along with those four pillars is the word compromise. I shudder when I hear a politician say, I will not compromise, because the only time that our country didn't compromise, we had a civil war. And so compromise is fundamental. There's 300 plus million of us. We are all different political views, religious views, and so on. And the idea that I won't compromise cannot be accepted. You have to compromise, in a democracy, the majority rules with respect to the rights of the minority.
Key words there, right? Respect and trust.
Right. and your rights extend as far as my nose. and when your rights interfere with my rights, there's a line there, and we have to understand that. I
appreciate that, yep. Well, thank you, Carl. Gosh, you gave us lots to think about today. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I want to thank you for joining us today, and a special shout out to Chris Mose, who is our sponsor for this episode of Snack Size Civics. And thank you.